welcome back to Connect the Conspiracy Show. As always, I'm your host, Larry Lease. Today, we're diving into the Kennedy curse. And of course, before we dive into this topic, just wanted to say Happy New Year and welcome to 2026. This year, we're going to do, of course, if you're new, one episode on the final Friday of every month. And hopefully, we'll be able to have an episode a month. And with that, let's dive right into today's episode, shall we? According to dictionary.com, the definition of a curse is the expression of a wish that misfortune, evil, doom, etc. befall a person, group, etc. If that's the case, then there's a good argument that one of the most famous political dynasties of the Western world continues to suffer from a curse to this day, I should say. When you get into the nitty-gritty of the Kennedys and all the woes that have befallen them, it does seem like kind of a dark cloud is hanging over them. And anyone who marries into the family, is it more than just bad luck? Is it something that they've courted and brought upon themselves? Let's see if we can unearth the unfortunate flashpoints of a family history that is literal, with a literal and figurative skeletons. Interesting. We got Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was married to Maria Shriver, and she's part of the Kennedy family. And his life's pretty great still, though, so hey, who knows? The Kennedy tree is quite sprawling. They are Catholic, so we'll take the events in chronological order and describe the relationships as and when necessary. Now, if you believe in such things as curses, and just FYI, won't be a surprise to regular viewers, I absolutely am not. There was an alleged one placed upon the Kennedys all the way back in 1811 when William Henry Harrison was elected President of the United States. It was under the cloud of an alleged curse cast upon him by the spiritual leader of the Shawnee tribe. As governor, Harrison had destroyed the headquarters of a confederacy of Native American tribes in 1811, in what was known as the Battle of Tippecanoe, after the nearby river. In a very specific curse, the prophet decreed that every future U.S. president elected in a year ending in 0 would die in office. I mean, it's nonsense, though, right? I mean, the curse is nonsense. I don't know whether this is actually borne out, but I mean, let's see, shall we? Weirdly, this seems to be the case for many presidents up until Reagan managed to break it after being elected in 1980. JFK won his election in 1960, but we'll get on to that. The Kennedys moved to America from Ireland in the mid-1800s and soon became prominent figures in the world of politics and business. JFK's grandfather, Patrick Joseph Kennedy, was born in Boston, Massachusetts in 1858. A member of the Democratic Party, he served in the Massachusetts House of Representatives and the Massachusetts Senate. He had 4 children, one of whom was Joseph Patrick Kennedy Sr. This Kennedy built massive wealth with his various investments and acquisitions and became the first chairman of the SEC under President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Wasn't Roosevelt the second one? The trust busting, right? I don't know. I never really got into who was really into the SEC stuff, right? I don't know if the SEC existed back then. Not entirely sure that's what the SEC does. I don't know why I just dug into this hole. But he married Rose Fitzgerald, who was the daughter of the mayor of Boston, and together they had 9 children, including JFK. So far, so curse-free. Unless you think the idea of 9 children sounds like hell. I don't have any kids yet, but 9 would definitely be a nightmare. This is the generation where it all starts going wrong. Rose and Joseph's third-born child and first daughter, known as Rosemary, was born in 1918. Is Rosemary the one who got a lobotomy when they were cool? I can't remember. She had learning and developmental difficulties, and as she grew older, apparently had an increasing number of violent outbursts and mood swings. In 1941, in what turned out to be a terrible decision, Joseph Kennedy authorized his daughter to be given a fairly new treatment at the time, a lobotomy. He'd even tell his wife this was happening. Jesus Christ. And it went wrong. Left someone unable to speak or care for herself. I mean, to be fair, it was a lobotomy. Chances of it going right weren't exactly brilliant. She was hidden away in various institutions, and her siblings didn't know what had happened to her for almost 20 years. The firstborn child of Rose and Joseph was Joseph Kennedy Jr. His father was setting him up for a future presidential run, and Joe Jr. left Harvard a year early to join the U.S. Naval Reserve. Promoted to lieutenant, he was flying for a bomber squadron in 1944 when the explosive payload he was carrying detonated early. killing him and his co-pilot, Joseph Jr., was 29. I actually knew this part before doing research. I knew he was killed in action. Prior to the research, I didn't actually know what caused the explosives in his plane to go off. 1 month later, Kathleen Kennedy, the fourth child of Rose and Joseph, found out that her new husband, future Duke of Devonshire, William Cavendish, had been killed by a sniper while in Belgium. He was in the British Army's Coldstream Guards. I mean, this is a very big family, and they're all getting married. They're all having kids and stuff, so it's a lot of people during a very violent time in history. That the idea that some of them are going to die in combat, especially seeing as they are a military family, isn't exactly a low. In 1948, Kathleen, who was known as Kick, was flying to the French Riviera with a new fiancé. The small plane they chartered was caught in a bad storm and crashed, killing everyone on board. Kate Kennedy was 28, and that's another thing. Like, rich, powerful families tend to fly around, previously in small planes and still in small planes. Helicopters and small planes, not the safest modes of transport. You always hear, like, planes are super safe, and it's like, well, yes, commercial passenger planes. Private aircraft, helicopters, not in the same league of safety. JFK was the second of Joseph and Rose's children. After his older brother's death, their father's presidential ambition fell onto his shoulders. He became a congressman and married Jackie, always get her last name wrong, Bouvier, in 1953. In 1956, their first child, Arabella, died at birth. After having two more children, the youngest, Patrick, was born prematurely in 1963 and died after only 2 days. Later in 1963, after becoming the 35th president of the United States, JFK was assassinated by being shot while riding in a car with his wife next to him. He was 46. In June 1964, youngest Kennedy sibling Edward, known as Ted, was on his way to a Democratic convention when the plane he was in crashed, killing his aide and the pilot. Kennedy himself was hospitalized for over 5 months with his injuries. The political dreams of the Kennedy family now fell on Robert, aka Bobby Kennedy, the seventh of Rose and Joseph's 9 children. Already a senator, he was celebrating a win on the way to become the Democratic Party's presidential pick when he was shot several times. He died at the age of 42, leaving behind his 10 children and wife Ethel, who was 3 months pregnant with their 11th child. 1, that's devastating, and 2, that's a lot of children. Out of their 9 children, Rose and Joseph Kennedy outlived 4 of them and sent 1 of them to an institution. In July 1969, Ted Kennedy, who is now the only surviving Kennedy son, was involved in what became known as the Chappaquiddick incident, where he accidentally drove off a narrow bridge, landing his car in the water and leaving his passenger to drown. He and some friends allegedly tried to save her, but ultimately left the scene and didn't alert the police until 10 hours later. He got a 2-month suspended sentence for leaving the scene of an accident, i.e. nothing. But this event hung over him, scuppering his chances of a later presidential run. Well, I would say that is punishment. Like, a suspended sentence just means they're not putting you in jail. You're still a criminal. Incidentally, if this rings any bell, there was a similar storyline at the end of season 1 of Succession, where the drug guy drives the car into the lake or something, which was crazy. In August 1973, son of RFK, Joseph P. Kennedy II, was driving a car with 6 other people in it when he flipped it, swerving to avoid another driver. He was fine, but his teenager brother, David, and David's girlfriend, Pam Kelly, were injured. David ended up with an addiction to painkillers, and Pam was paralyzed from the chest down. Joseph was fined $100. He swerved to avoid another driver. Was he really at fault? This just sounded like a terrible accident. Having a fine there feels like they're saying he did something wrong. Surely at $100 it should be nothing or something way more serious. Are we saying he did something wrong, or are we not? In November 1973, Ted Kennedy's 12-year-old son got bone cancer and had to have his right leg amputated. In a slightly other piece of bad news, in January 1974, the woman who had been dating Joe Kennedy Jr. when he died was murdered in a machete attack on the steps of her home. Aaliyah Ponzel Lindsley was 56, and the murder has never been officially solved. In April 1984, RFK's son David, who had been involved in an earlier car crash with his brother, died of a drug overdose in a hotel in Florida. He was 28. As a 13-year-old, he had been alone in a hotel room watching his father on TV when he was shot, that you've got to think would mess you up quite a bit. On New Year's Eve, 1997, another of RFK's sons fell off this mortal coil. Michael Kennedy died in a skiing accident in Colorado at the age of 39. Skiing is surprisingly dangerous. I don't ski because I like skiing. Skiing's fine. It's not my favorite thing to do in the world. And it's just one of those things where I'm like, I don't like this enough, but I'm not good at it enough for the amount of danger that it poses. And I just don't want to get hurt. In July 1999, son of President JFK, John F. Kennedy Jr., died when the aircraft he was piloting crashed into the ocean off Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts. I totally remember this happening. I was actually watching it on the news when it happened. His wife, Carolyn Bassett, and her sister, Lauren, also died in the crash. He was 38. Crazy to think he died at the age that I am now. The curse seems to have died down a bit for a while, heading into the new millennium, but there are a few more incidents. In 2011, Ted Kennedy's daughter, Kara, died of a heart attack while exercising in a gym. She was 51. In 2012, the first wife of RFK Jr., yes, he, the fluoride-hating brainworms man, who's the current U.S. Secretary of Health and Human Services, she killed herself on the grounds of a New York property. Mary Richardson Kennedy was 52 and had been separated from RFK Jr. since 2010. In August 2019, RFK's granddaughter, Theoris Kennedy Hill, was found unresponsive at the family's Massachusetts estate and died of what was called an accidental drug overdose. She was 22. In April 2020, doesn't sound like it calmed down at all, honestly, if you're still listening. In April 2020, another of JFK's granddaughters, Maeve Kennedy McKeon, died by drowning alongside with her 8-year-old son when their canoe got pulled into the choppy waters of the Chesapeake Bay. She was 40. There is another death that pops up on some lists. JFK's nephew, Christopher Kennedy Lawford, who died of a heart attack in 2018. But he was 63, so I don't think it was significant enough of an outlier to add him to the official list. Sorry, Christopher. Yeah, 63, it's young to die, but it's not like he just had a heart attack. It happens. So according to our list then, Rose and Joseph had 9 children. 2 were assassinated, 1 died in World War II, 1 died in a plane crash, 1 was institutionalized after a botched lobotomy. JFK himself had 4 children, 1 of whom was a stillbirth, 1 died after 2 days, 1 died in a plane crash, and his brother, RFK, had 11 children, 1 of whom died of an overdose, 1 died in a skiing accident. Is this a large toll for one family? Well, let's decode the curse a bit and see if there's actually anything to it or not. I mean, it's a lot of people, but it's also a really massive family. I have a small family, and a lot of them are, around doing stuff, and some do, risky outdoor activities, but, and others aren't around anymore. But in reality, people just die. They do. Large families bring their own set of logistical issues just by virtue of the fact that they're so big. RFK and his wife, Ethel, for instance, had 11 children, named 2 of them Mary, presumably having lost track by the time the second one came along. Why would you name? That makes you crazy. Even if you got 11 kids, you could think of a different name. Looking at it from a statistical standpoint, though the larger the family, the greater the chance that something bad is going to happen to someone, it's also a question of visibility. The Kennedys were an extremely well-known family across many echelons of society. So any bad things that happen to them are going to get a million times more press than if they happen to a regular family without generational wealth. And the wealth also plays its own part. Where did the Kennedys' money come from? Where did that start out? Because, I'm assuming RFK is still rich because, I don't know, he's Health and Human Services under Trump. I just feel like he's probably got money. He's got those money vibes still, honestly. Because he says crazy things and people pay attention to him. And usually, if you're poor, that's crazy. If you're rich, it's eccentric. And RFK is eccentric. In my opinion, he's crazy, but, he's the Secretary of Health and Human Services. The wealth also plays its own part, giving Kennedy family members access to such things as flying in small planes and skiing trips, both of which are more risky than flying in a normal plane and going on a camping holiday, for example. The mindset of a group of risk-taking rich people used to getting what they want also needs to be factored in. Joe Kennedy Jr., who died in World War II, had completed 25 missions and could have returned home where his father was putting things in place for a future presidential run. Instead, he took on a secret mission flying an aircraft that was going to be remotely piloted and detonated somewhere in southern France. Kennedy and his co-pilot were supposed to bail out after priming the explosives and letting the plane fly on, but the bombs detonated early. Joe Jr. did express quite some worrying pro-Hitler views, though. so maybe it was a good thing that he never got to hold the U.S.'s highest office. Michael LeMoyne Kennedy, one of RFK's sons, died in a skiing accident in 1997. But it wasn't just a simple accident, it was quite avoidable. He and other family members were playing American football on skis on the slopes in Aspen, Colorado. Apparently, this was so dangerous that ski patrols had told them to stop playing on several occasions, and their mother had even been contacted to get her to ask them to stop playing. Nothing worked, and the failed game went ahead. Michael wasn't wearing a helmet or other safety gear and slammed into a tree while trying to catch a pass that was thrown to him. His untimely death notwithstanding, Michael was also involved in a sex scandal with his underage babysitter, leading to the breakup of his marriage and scuppering any chances that he or his brother had at a political career. Yep, this is another thing. They're just up to rich people, and often that's more dangerous. I don't know if this is true, but I do feel that people who are born into this kind of money do take more risks. I don't know if it's because they're bored or something, but it does seem that they do tend to live riskier lifestyles, not just facilitated by heli skiing or whatever, but definitely facilitated by that, or whatever people get up to these days. JFK's sister, Kathleen Kennedy, and his son, JFK Jr., both died in plane crashes, albeit 51 years apart. Kick was with Earl Peter Wentworth Fitzwilliam. That's a name and a half, isn't it? Oh, is he here? Earl crossing the pond again, are we? I don't think America has Earls. You don't have any titles like that, right? Earl Peter Wentworth Fitzwilliam, her new fiancé, and en route to the French Riviera when a storm blew up. A pilot said they should wait for it to clear. Kennedy and Fitzwilliam wanted to keep going. I don't like it. It's like, keep going, pilot. And it's like, this is a really bad idea. Who's the rich one? Pilot, keep going. And they flew into the storm. The plane crashed, and everybody died. JFK Jr. was flying himself, his wife, and his sister to a wedding in 1999. While he had, while he had obtained his private pilot's license the year before, he was only supposed to fly in good weather conditions using visual cues. So he's not instrument rated. And if you're not instrument rated and you go on flying in instrument weather, well, you're just an idiot. And while the flight was in July, he didn't take off until after 8:30, which, I mean, it's going to get pretty dark after 8:30 quite quickly. Martha's Vineyard is an island, meaning they were flying over water. And after the plane was recovered, the accident was put down to pilot here. What a surprise. A report by the NTSB, or the National Transportation Safety Board, said the crash was due to, quote, the pilot's failure to maintain control of the airplane during a descent over water at night, which was the result of spatial disorientation. Right? Because he's not instrument rated. Of course he's getting spatially disoriented. It's dark, and he doesn't know how to read his instruments properly. Factors in the accident were haze and the dark. It seems that these two crashes might also have been avoided with a little more circumspection on the part of the Kennedys, Ed Kennedy, JFK, and RFK's youngest brother. Seems to be the one link to the idea that the bad luck his family suffers is some sort of curse. After being rescued from the crashed plane in 1964, the year after JFK was killed, Bobby Kennedy commented, "Somebody up there doesn't like us." Here, I believe he was referring to God. After the Chappaquiddick incident in 1969, Ted was interviewed on television and said he wondered whether some awful curse did actually hang over all the Kennedys. Now this bugs me because Ted should count himself very fortunate in both of these situations. I would argue that Ted was actually very lucky and shouldn't be banging on about a curse when he survived a plane crash that killed 2 other people and then managed to exit a submerged vehicle with no lasting ill effects while his passenger was trapped and drowned. And he was not punished at all for that accident. So if I were him, I'd be counting my lucky stars that I was okay rather than bemoaning the fact that bad things happen to my family. Yeah, but he's a rich person. This just feels like Nepo baby behavior. So let's move on to the 2 big names now. JFK and his brother RFK. Yeah, it's very bad luck that 2 brothers were both assassinated within a few years. But they were both in high-profile positions, one of which was the most most high profile in the country, if not the world. Yeah. Isn't being president like one of the most dangerous jobs in the world despite all the protection? Because, several of them have died in office by assassins. If you look at the curse of Tippecanoe that we mentioned at the beginning, we can see that a lot of presidents have died in office. If we take Tippecanoe out of it and just look at the numbers, of the 45 individual men who have served as POTUS or were assassinated in office, 4 more presidents died of natural causes while in office, bringing the total number of presidents who died while in office to 8. So basically 20%. You got a 10% chance of being murdered. Another 10% have died in office. That's pretty risky. There have also been many assassination attempts on presidents or presidential hopefuls, ranging from those that were foiled in the planning stage to people such as John Hinckley Jr. shooting Reagan multiple times before the Gipper, I think, said this wrong once, and people had to go at me and they explained to me what it was about, and I forgot. And they were like, "How did you not know this?" And I'm like, "Because I'm not old. I'm not old enough to know, like, Ronald Reagan's nicknames." He managed to make a full recovery, breaking the curse of Tippecanoe along the way. We all remember the bullet that whistled by Trump's ear in 2024, which wasn't the only security issue he faced during his campaign. George W. Bush had a grenade lobbed at him. Basically, being president is an inherently dangerous job. But there were a few areas of security failings during Kennedy's fateful last motorcade that could have potentially avoided the assassination, for that day at least. These included points such as the route the motorcade was taking was widely known, but the Secret Service had not shared it with the FBI in advance. The route went past many tall buildings, security nightmare. The route also took a hard left turn where the president's car would be very slow, if not stationary, for a moment, allowing a clear shot from a sniper's vantage point. Other things relating to the Kennedys can just be put down to bad luck, such as Ted Kennedy's son getting bone cancer and Kik's first husband dying in the war. A lot of people died in World War II, so it's probably not worth singling him out. Now let's take a look at the other side of the coin. Now, yes, out of Rose and Joseph Sr.'s 9 children, 4 of them died early, but the other 5 lived into their 80s and 90s, apart from Ted, who clocked out at 77. Even poor Rosemary, who had been lobotomized, lived to be 86. When her siblings were finally told her whereabouts after their father's death, her sister Eunice Kennedy Shriver, in particular, Maria Shriver's sister, welcomed her back into the fold, and this was one of the reasons Eunice went on to found the Special Olympics in 1968, helping adults and children with intellectual disabilities to train, share skills, and experience the joy of the sport community. JFK had 2 surviving children at the time of his death. We knew what happened to JFK Jr., but his daughter, Caroline, currently 76 or 77, has been the U.S. ambassador to Japan and Australia, which seem like pretty plum rolls. I think he's a billionaire. It's not a political appointment. Sorry, it is a political appointment, not a career appointment. So I think it's just usually someone who's donated money to the right parties or something. And then they're like, "Hey, you want to get to be an ambassador to a nice, peaceful country?" And it's pretty nice. It's a really nice house. RFK had 11 children, 2 who died young, 1 in a skiing accident, 1 from an overdose, but the other 9 are still going strong. 2 of his grandkids died, 1 of a drug overdose, and the other in a more recent canoe accident. But it seems like the bad luck is diluting itself generation after generation. Or maybe as RFK said after Ted's non-fatal plane crash, quote, "If my mother hadn't had any more children after her first 4, she would have nothing now." I guess the only reason we've survived is that there are more of us than there is trouble. Another question we can ask is why this particular family has had this run of deaths and bad luck. I wouldn't say that they have done anything to deserve it necessarily, but there are enough scandals in many of the male offspring's past that definitely cut them out as far less sympathetic figures when you find out about them. To be example, I was a tad sad to see Michael Kennedy died in a skiing accident. Then I read he was disregarding authorities' warnings, had a sex scandal with a 14-year-old, and I suddenly cared a little bit less. Yeah, look, if a rich dude is going to go out and do like American football skiing without a helmet, and smashes into a tree while playing it, despite having been warned that it's incredibly dangerous multiple times, I mean, dude, I'm sorry, but it's like somebody rides a motorcycle in the rain without a helmet. You did this to yourself. Many Kennedy researchers put a lot of the blame for the family's reckless streak on the patriarch, Joseph Patrick Kennedy Sr. As a Harvard-educated go-getter, he was elected to the presidency of Columbia Trust Bank at the age of 25 and later amassed huge amounts of wealth, equivalent to the billions today, investing in Hollywood studios, real estate, and the legal importing of liquor. Well, there we go. That's where the Kennedy money came from. President of a bank at 25? God damn, dude. I saw he was allegedly involved in a lot of illegal importing as well and had ties to the mob. but this has been disputed. He was the U.S. ambassador to Great Britain from 1938 to 1940, seeing the start of the Second World War and moving his family out of London when the bombing started, which was seen as a huge act of cowardice. Like Joe Jr., he had anti-Jewish bias, and he didn't mind sharing and publicly stating views that were at odds with messages coming out of Washington, D.C. As far as his own political ambitions went, here's a quote from Josiah Wedgwood, a British MP, and apart from the word Catholic, you can substitute a tech billionaire or even the current president's name in here too. So, quote, we have a rich man, untrained in diplomacy, unlearned in history and politics, who is a great public publicity seeker and who apparently is ambitious to be the first Catholic president of the United States. Because of the differences in his own views to that of the government, Joe's senior owned presidential bid was a non-starter, which is why he started using his money and influence to grease the wheels for his sons. If you don't think he sounds that bad so far, he had numerous extramarital affairs, had his own daughter lobotomized for being what he called mentally, you can pretty sure you know what I'm not going to say, when other medical professionals thought it more likely she was just depressed. These days, experts believe that Rosemary suffered a lack of oxygen to her brain during birth, resulting in a neonatal brain injury, and she might also had some form of autism. It seems as though he hid Rosemary out of the way so she wouldn't be a distraction in Joe Jr.'s presidential bid. Classy, guys, classy. It's pretty unwrong that he thought a behaviorally difficult young woman could tarnish the shine of the Kennedy line, when so many of the men managed to do it all by themselves. In this light, while I'm obviously not minimizing the death of his sons, it seems that Joseph Sr. was taught a very harsh lesson about ambition and hubris. Wow. Here's an interesting side story as to why the Kennedys might have had so many premature deaths in the family. They are one of 13 satanic bloodlines that rule the world, but while they're high up on the Illuminati pyramid, or were, they kept getting on the wrong side of the other Illuminati members, which resulted in multiple deaths, especially on Joseph Sr.'s side. One of the 13 demonic bloodlines or whatever? Yeah, okay, whatever. Excuse me. I read a piece on a website called theeventchronicle.com, which tries to say that every single person called Kennedy has ties back to the same family that either originated in Scotland or Ireland. They're not sure. So, choice quote from the site. So the question always arises as I examine the elite of the Illuminati in the New World Order. How is this Kennedy related to this other Kennedy? Although I can't explain the exact odds, I can safely say that if one goes back several hundred years, the Kennedy aristocrats all tie together. I mean, if we go back far enough, we eventually all tie together. Also, not every Kennedy descendant from time immemorial has the surname Kennedy anymore. So the amount of people we're looking at is extremely large. Apparently, another clue that the Kennedys were high-ranking Illuminati members was because some of them had drug problems and arrests for possession. And according to John Morse on the Event Chronicle, that bastion of great information, the Illuminati have long used drugs. Maybe the secret society argument would be a bit stronger if the modern-day understanding in the Illuminati didn't start as a countercultural parody in the 1960s. Right? But that would be a bit too boring though, wouldn't it? That would be a bit too ordinary. So let's sum up. I don't believe that the Kennedys were victims of a curse. Nope. Because I don't believe that even if curses were real, that they're victims of a curse. But they're also not victims of a curse because curses are not real. The curse of Tippecanoe, if it was ever uttered aloud, was aimed at everyone who became president, not just JFK. It also isn't true because Reagan, he lived to be an old-ass man. No other specific curse is mentioned in relation to them. No gypsy cursed them for not buying her lucky feather. No sperm lower cursed them with their dying breath. No business rivals set up a meeting with a local witch to curse Joseph Sr.'s transactions. Some people think that when Joseph Sr. had Rosemary lobotomized, that was the beginning of the bad luck. And he paid in karma forevermore. That might be true, but it seems a bit unfair for that payback to carry on after both his and Rosemary's deaths. Joseph Sr. definitely should have paid for what he did. I doubt Rosemary would have wanted any retribution to come at the cost of her siblings' lives. That's the thing with curses. You can't always control the outcomes or see the parameters exactly how you think you want them. Well, that's if curses are real, of course, which they aren't. Now, as we discussed, most of the Kennedys' deaths were the result of reckless behavior, of being important figures and nepo babies, and therefore targets in the public eye. But also reckless behavior just because they're rich kids, while some tragedies, good, majority of the family had escaped anything significantly awful happening to them. In a podcast called Fatal Voyage, JFK Jr. Case Solved, reporter Anthony Tillett says, quote, "It seems there's just this kind of litany of recklessness, bad behavior, criminality, and bad luck running through all these kids." Yeah, honestly, when I said or heard Fatal Voyage, I was like, oh, he's going to be like a conspiracy theorist curse guy. But he actually nails it, which is, it's exactly right. While there aren't so many visible Kennedys around today, there's still a big name in politics thanks to the legacy. But also the aforementioned Pamela Kennedy Shriver and weird old RFK Jr. All of JFK's siblings and their children were brought up in great wealth, with access to the Kennedy compound on Cape Cod, top-tier educations, and introductions to other rich, powerful, and influential people from birth. So it's not like they were horribly deprived as well as unlucky. Did they statistically have more premature deaths than the average family that size? I think so. But as Redditor Gas Gas Joe puts it on Reddit, thread about the curse, yes, we went deep on Reddit. This question about public safety comes from Twitter because apparently that's something that happens now. Munchmeat 2015 asks, wealthy families often have access to danger. It's very well put. So if the key to staying alive is not to be in the top tier of politics, not flying in tiny private planes during bad weather, and not playing stupid games on a ski slope, I think most of us are golden. So with that, let me know in the comments section below. Do you think curses are real? And do you think there is a Kennedy curse? With that, thank you so much for watching and listening. If you want to support the channel, you can buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/CTC podcast. Thank you so much, and we will see you next month.